Wide receivers 1 to 50, ranked in tiers for your viewing pleasure. Let's dive straight in. Big S tier this week, Tom. We've got Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, Justin Jefferson, Rome Odunze, and Zay Flowers. This feels like the studs upon studs. You are starting every single week. And Rome Odunze finds his way in there yet again. What is it about the matchup that has you intrigued for Rome Odunze this week?
Yeah, it's definitely getting to the point where maybe Rome Odunze is going to find himself falling. But this week, against the Bengals defense, it's so difficult not to rank it this highly. The Bears very much in need of a bounce back after losing to the Ravens last week. Second AFC North game on the road in a row. But the Bengals defense, they've been so soft. They rank 31st in EPA pass defense allowed. They've given up the 16th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And normally the reason why they haven't given up more is because teams build up a lead and then they can just choose to run on the Bengals. So I think that it would be a good confidence builder to see Caleb Williams actually getting the ball to Odunze more. What he did do well last week was when the ball was going to Odunze. The rest of the game, it was like stuff that didn't feel so great. So I've got enough faith in him to keep him in this tier for at least one more week. But if it doesn't happen this week, then yeah, he's probably not dropping to the A tier, but down straight to the B tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in our A tier, we have got Devontae Adams, Lab McConkey, Michael Pittman, George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, Drake London, DK Metcalf, Brian Thomas Jr., and Chris Olave. Tom, Drake London, hopefully back this week after missing last week. I think maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Maybe I can creep him up in my rankings a little bit. Do you think there's an argument that he could be in that S tier alongside Flowers and Rome Odunze?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, missing last week was a prime matchup, and it would have been really good to have seen him out there. Really good, probably for Kirk Cousins as well. But this week against the Patriots, the way you beat the Patriots is through the air. They're a really strong run defense. We rank top 5 there. Against the pass, they rank a bit lower at 11th, but they've given up the 9th most adjusted fantasy points to the wide receiver position. There are some splits with Darnell Mooney, and there are some splits with the Falcons when they're on the road, which a little bit kind of cause for concern. But I'm kind of okay here saying that what we've seen from Drake London this year has been excellent, and I'll trust that that will continue.
And then Brian Thomas also in this tier, plenty of talk, rumors of trades and all sorts. It does sound like the Jags are going to lean more towards Travis Hunter, wide receiver 1. Does that have you nervous about starting Brian Thomas this week?
Well, the whole Brian Thomas experience this year has been nerve-wracking, but going up against the Raiders, that should be a game where the Jags can kind of do what they want. Obviously, this game's in a dome, which always makes things a little bit less, worrisome for like the environment around them. But Brian Thomas, it's been miserable. You go back over the last few weeks, and I was at the game at Wembley, and you kind of look at it and just there wasn't much which made you feel like everything was going to start clicking all of a sudden. Perhaps the bye week has given him time to reset this. But the Brian Thomas experience so far has been 9 points, 9 points, 7.5, 10.6, 12, 23, and 6.1. He looks like the biggest bust of first round or two of fantasy drafts this year. And try to figure out whether you're going to get 7 points or whether you're going to get 20 points. It's incredibly difficult, but I do think that coming off the bye, we should see a little bit more improvement from him and Trevor Lawrence.
Hopefully. And then Chris Olave has been the volume king with Spencer Rattler under center. We see obviously the quarterback change this week. Do you think that could potentially impact him and the volume that he sees?
Massively. I mean, because the stuff coming his way from Rattler wasn't exactly gold dust. It was just volume above everything else. And then to go to Tyler Shuck, who, pick 40 in the draft, wasn't expected to go there necessarily. But Kellen Moore chose him. Kellen Moore and the Saints, management, they believed in him and they believed he was worth a second-round pick. So they must have seen something. But against the Rams, this just feels like a recipe for a disaster for your first start. I've got, the Saints on the road against the Rams, who've got the second best defense against the pass. The Saints have struggled with moving the ball at times anyway. So, yeah, even though the Rams give up the 7th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position, I don't feel very good about him.
Yeah, and then before we move into our B tier, don't forget, if you are finding us for the first time, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Enjoy the content. Hit subscribe, get some more. In the B tier, we have got Nico Collins, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jordan Addison, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Cortland Sutton, Tatara McMillan, Travis Hunter, Khalil Shakir, Stephon Diggs, and Wandale Robinson. Tom, Keenan Allen, the last couple of weeks, seems to be slightly getting phased out as Rondé Gadsden is taking more of a role. Are you nervous about what the volume he could see given the arrival of another receiving weapon in Los Angeles?
Well, I mean, his target share last week was 20%. The week before it was 25%. So I don't think it's too bad. It's just kind of like, where's the value in those ones? We see in the kind of the end zone targets that he was getting before, and over the last 4 weeks, he's only been below 20% target share once in that time. It's more like we're just not getting the fantasy points returns that we would like. In amongst that, like week 7, where he hit 28 points, we've had returns of going back to week 4. 8.7, 10.8, 6.7, 28.9, and 8.4. So, yeah, the consistency hasn't been there in the way that we would like to be able to lean on. Playing the Titans, who are a massive underdog in this one, you'd like to think that even if the Chargers were completely having their way with this game, 10-point favorites, by the time that they eased off, or by the time they stopped pushing the ball to Keenan Allen as much, that Keenan Allen would already have got there. But this offense has become really multiple in a way that we're just not used to seeing under Greg Roman, and that does make it a little bit difficult to know which wide receiver is going to pop every week. But I still have more confidence in Keenan Allen than Quentin Johnson, who's really disappeared.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think Quentin Johnson is a player that you're struggling to start week in, week out. Touching on Travis Hunter, we talked about him briefly with the Brian Thomas conversation. Do you have more confidence in him this week, or do you need to see it more from him and from the Jaguars forcing the ball his way before you can probably slot him in as anything more than the wide receiver 3?
Yeah, again, it's kind of like, well, what have the Jags done with this bye week? They tilted one way or another with everything that they want to do. As we mentioned, like the Raiders are not a strong defense. They rank 8th in fantasy points allowed to a position. They rank 26th in pass defense EPA. So the Jags should be able to do what they want. You look at Travis Hunter's target shares, and 27% last week was fantastic, definitely. I mean, it's the highest number that any Jags wide receiver has hit at any point this season, highest that any pass catches hit. And that was coming off 16.7 the week before, which is, a fine number. It's not necessarily the strongest, but we kind of just need more days like that. And I think I don't necessarily have massive confidence in projecting anything here, but this is kind of a week where it's like, well, I'll start him, and then this is the week which I'm hoping will give me confidence moving forward.
Yeah, and then in our C tier, we do have Deebo Samuel, Romeo Doubs, DJ Moore, Quentin Johnson, and Jawan Jennings. Tom, no Terry McLaurin this week. Does that make you more confident or less confident in what Deebo Samuel could do?
I'm definitely fine with Deebo this week. He's probably somebody who will nudge up a few spots now, but we've got that Terry McLaurin being ruled out. And the Seahawks, they rank 3rd in zone coverage. We've seen over the years that Deebo can really eat against zone coverage. When he's at his best, he's finding those soft spots in the zones and just getting the ball and then creating yards after the catch. And he's been much better with his yards after the catch this year than he was last year when he was still with the 49ers. The Seahawks defense, they are a good defense, but they are pretty banged up at corner. Yes, kind of getting some people back off bye, but they are not necessarily somebody where I worry about playing guys like Deebo against them.
Yeah, I think the Deebo breakdown is quite interesting because it's you can't decide whether he's better with Terry McLaurin. Does he see more volume? Does McLaurin take stuff away? I've just run the numbers. So far this year, he's averaged 15 points a game with Terry McLaurin in the lineup. He's averaging 15.7 points without Terry McLaurin. So there's basically no discernible difference, and certainly nothing you can take from the matchup exactly that way. Before we move into our D tier, though, if you do have any start sit questions, you want to have our thoughts and opinions on a trade, make sure you get them in the comments below. Tom and I will answer all of those questions and give you our best breakdown. In the D tier, it's a bit of a skinny one. Tre Tucker, Kayshon Boutte, Rashid Shaheed, and Jameson Williams. Kayshon Boutte been probably the best deep threat in the league this year. We've seen what Drake May is doing. It feels kind of adept for him to be lodged in this this tier along with other deep threats like Tre Tucker, Rashid Shaheed, and Jameson Williams.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, what he's doing is incredible, averaging almost 19 PPR points per game over the last 3, whilst having target shares, 2 of them above 20%, 1 down at 8.3. So he's been efficient when he needs to. And we touched on this in the quarterback video. Drake May right now is throwing the ball deep better than anybody in the league to a real MVP level. And when he goes deep, it tends to be to Kayshon Boutte. Obviously, the Falcons are a really good pass defense. They rank 12th in EPA allowed. They've allowed the 6th fewest fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And it kind of isn't an easy matchup by any means, but the way that Kayshon Boutte is getting there is on these occasional deep shots and being productive when that happens. And last week we saw him go up against the Cleveland Browns, and that was a matchup which on paper didn't look particularly friendly either, but the way to beat them was by going deep. And I think that, again, we see him have another productive week here, at least to the point where you can start him as a deep flex consideration.
Yeah, I really like him. If you're looking for that dart throw, he's absolutely out producing what you would expect from the volume every single week. In the E tier, we do have Josh Downs, Jacoby Myers, Xavier Worthy, Alec Pierce, Kendrick Bourne, and Troy Franklin. Tom, Jacoby Myers expecting to get back to the lineup this week. Plenty of rumors about him potentially getting traded. Do you think this could be a show up week to try and force through that trade?
No, because he's been asking for a trade for a while, and it's been miserable. Like, he's started the season hot with 17 PPR points, then dropped down to 12.8, and then since week 3, he's yet to hit double-digit points. Over the last 3 games he's played, he's not been above 7. It has been just miserable, and Tre Tucker looks to be creating some distance between him. When Myers has been out there, it's not been for a lack of target share. Like he said, weeks with 30% target share, 29% target share. But now Brock Bowers is back and Brock Bowers is healthy. I think that's the biggest threat to Jacoby Myers having good weeks.
And then in our F tier, we do have Darnell Mooney, Keon Coleman, Cooper Kupp, Chimere Dike, Malik Washington, and Matthew Golden. Tom, I just want to touch on Chimere Dike. What he has done over the last 2 weeks has been really impressive. I've been intrigued as to the usage. They seem to be getting him freed up on crossing routes, and he's looked awesome. 16.9 points the week before last, 16.4 points last week. Do you think you can potentially trust him moving forward, and could he be the sort of late season rookie breakout league winner that we often see?
I don't necessarily think he is, because I don't think that this Titans offense is going to give us enough value in it. We've seen that this new coaching staff that came in on the back of the old coaching staff being fired, they're not particularly aggressive on anything, not doing anything particularly well at the minute. And between Iomana and Calvin Ridley, when he gets back, which is probably next week rather than this week, there's just enough kind of competition that I think that it's going to be difficult. It is noteworthy that these games that we're talking about over the last 2 have both come without Calvin Ridley out there. So in the games where Ridley was out there, we were seeing much lower points totals, much lower target shares. And I just don't think that the volume of passes is there for the Titans to, or at least the volume of quality passes is there to really want to roster DK.
No, that is fair. I guess my one caveat is that I do wonder if we're just going to see enough manufactured touches, enough schemed up touches that he could see enough volume to get home. I don't think he's going to be, 20 points a week, but maybe he could be a solid wide receiver 3 flex play for you moving forward. And then the final guy we have got ranked here, Matthew Golden, our wide receiver 50. Now, feels like a lot of people were hyping him up at the beginning of the season, but he just can't command volume. And with more wide receivers getting added to the wide receiver room in Green Bay, with Christian Watson back last week, Jaden Reed on the horizon. What are your thoughts and expectations for Matthew Golden?
Yeah, I mean, Christian Watson had a route share of 65%. He ran just 4 fewer routes for Matthew Golden, and he took that deep role away straight away. I mean, they were still trying to get Matthew Golden involved. It just didn't really work out to any kind of valuable level whatsoever. I mean, Matthew Golden had a target share of 8%, which feels pretty miserable. When you look at Romeo Doubs and Tucker Kraft, both up above 16%, Christian Watson sitting at 10%. And the bigger thing is just like, I'm definitely giving him some credit still for where he was drafted. And this matchup against the Panthers, like, they have a reasonably good pass defense, but they don't have an excellent one. Obviously, they've got Horn, who is a great cornerback, but then it drops off quite dramatically. And I think that if the Packers want to scheme stuff to him and want to see a return on their investment, their first round wide receiver in 20 plus years, then this is the kind of situation where maybe we do see it. But if you don't get it this week, then it's probably time to just realize you have to drop him in redraft.
Brutal. And that is it. Wide receivers ranked 1 250 perfectly on the way out. Make sure you're hitting that hype and the thumbs up, and we'll be back with other positional rankings videos very soon.